With the SAA having been placed under business rescue by President Cyril Ramaphosa and Eskom saying its systems are still highly constrained, the power utility says stage 2 load shedding will continue until 11 o'clock tonight due to a shortage in the power generation capacity. To talk to us more about what all this means, Economist Dawie Roodt is on the line. Very good morning to you, Dawie. What should we make of this promise by Eskom that the power grid will be stable in December, for the rest of December? Should we believe them?
Good morning to you. In fact, my power just went off here where I am, so this is quite uncomfortable for me as well. The reality is we just don't know. And going back to 1 year ago, in fact, there was also a press release 1 year ago where they promised us that the power, the network would be stable as well. And if I'm not mistaken, there were a couple of blackouts during December a year ago as well. So I'm not so sure whether we can believe them. I just don't know. The reality also is that the South African economy is hardly growing. We just saw the economy contracting in the third quarter of this year again. I've made a quick calculation, and that even if the economy expands at the rate of say around about 1% or so, it's quite possible, depending on some other factors, that we can have zero economic growth for this year. At this stage, I do expect the economy to grow still, but what's going to happen to electricity, of course, is one of those major factors that is going to determine whether we're going to see economic growth whatsoever this year.
We have breaking news now. An announcement has just been made that we're moving to stage 4.
Oh, my goodness. Well, yes, the question then is, let me perhaps get to the good news. The good news is certainly that we've had wonderful rains. The agricultural sector has been really under a lot of strain recently, and hopefully with the rains that we've had recently, we should see the reservoirs filling up, and that should be good for the agricultural sector. Unfortunately, agriculture is a relatively small sector in the South African economy, and also, unfortunately, Eskom seems to be complaining about the rain. Apparently, the coal is getting wet. But I think there's one or two other factors that are also very interesting, at least, if not worrying. And one has to do with what is going on at South African Airways, as an example. South African Airways has just been put under business rescue, as you reported earlier, and not, by the way, by government. Perhaps technically they have been put under business rescue by government, but that is after government has been forced to do that. So the application for business rescue originated actually from the trade union Solidarity. So I think the credit should go to Solidarity and certainly not to government. But the point I'm trying to make, what is going to happen if Solidarity now threatens to bring an application for business rescue of some of the other state-owned enterprises, including Eskom? Because the president has been said now that it is possible for a state-owned enterprise to be put out under business rescue. And clearly, what is going on at Eskom at the moment is not good for the economy, and it's simply not sustainable for the economy over time.
There's a lot of suspicion around the government's strategy in fixing Eskom, and also in that SAA strategy you were just talking about just now. Are you convinced in government's in the efficacy of government strategy in trying to bring about solutions for these troubled SOEs?
Well, the short answer to that is no. I simply do not trust government anymore. They've proved themselves to be totally inefficient in running state-owned enterprises. They've been telling us they're going to restructure Eskom as an example, or South African Airways as an example. They've failed in all instances. Basically, I do agree with a strategy whereby Eskom should be broken up into 3 pieces, but that's only the beginning of the whole thing. What needs to happen after that really depends on each one of these different pieces of Eskom, of course, but that should only be seen as a first step. The second step should include things like, for example, privatization. It should include things like, for example, some of the debt of Eskom should be moved over to the state, because if you take a lot of debt, and the outstanding debt of Eskom at the moment is in excess of 500 billion rand, and you break it into 3 pieces, then you still have 500 billion rands worth of debt. So Eskom is totally unsustainable as it is. We don't have an answer on where the money is going to come from. We don't know what's going to happen after it's been broken up into 3 pieces. We need answers on those sort of issues, and we simply do not get answers from government. And I don't know what is going to happen. Are we going to wait until the absolute last moment, like what happened at South African Airways, before government actually starts acting? I just don't know. In the meantime, business people need to invest and need to make plans. They have to plan ahead for 2020. And as things stand at the moment, I'm afraid, despite the efforts of the president to lure more investment into South Africa, people are simply sitting on their hands because we do not have electricity, and also because we have a government that just keeps on talking and is very reluctant to really implement the obvious plans and solutions to many problems that we have in the country.
One of the things that government is chasing is to try and show the ratings agencies that they're doing something to try and turn around the economy. Will all these efforts have an impact on how we are rated with those upcoming ratings soon?
In fact, I would argue that government is part of the problem. Government is part of the reason why we are probably going to see a further downgrade. There are many factors, many things that the rating agencies look at, but there are three major things. The one is policy certainty, which we certainly, well, I can't really say we've got policy certainty on many levels in South Africa. The second one has to do with the fiscal accounts. Now, the fiscal account has to do with the state debt levels, as an example, and state debt levels are currently going up at a totally unsustainable rate. The state debt levels are at record high levels at the moment. And the third factor that rating agencies consider is simply economic growth. Now, economic growth, like we've just spoken about that, we hardly have any economic growth in South Africa, and economic growth is not only important because of the obvious things like job creation and poverty alleviation and things like that. Economic growth is also important because the size of the economy is quite often used in many calculations, like, for example, state debt to GDP or the fiscal deficit to GDP and things like that. Now, I'm afraid putting these three factors together, I will really be surprised if South Africa will still have an investment rating by the end of next year. In fact, in the first couple of years of next year, first couple of months of next year, I expect the rating agencies to downgrade South Africa again, and then things are going to get even worse in South Africa. A weaker currency, high interest rate, and even weaker economic growth. And the main reason of that has to do with a government that's sitting on their hands and not implementing the kind of plans that they clearly do have. So just start implementing some of these plans instead of waiting until the last moment like what we've seen at South African Airways.
You were saying that Solidarity should be credited for the decisions that have been taken at SAA. Now, the Cabin Crew Association and also the Metal Workers Union are saying that they're going to the courts to have this decision turned around. What are your thoughts about the turnaround strategist that has been appointed, the business rescue specialist that has been appointed? And do you think that Vuyani Jahana is the right person to come back and rescue SAA?
Yeah, I must tell you that the previous boss, Mr. Jarana, the CEO of South African Airways, as well as Mr. Adebe, that was the CEO at Eskom, those were considered as quite competent managers at the various state-owned enterprises. They did an excellent job as far as I could measure. And part of the reason why they decided to resign was simply because of political interference, primarily, according to reports from Minister Pravin Gordhan. So Minister Pravin Gordhan was actually part of the problem. So they've left now, and we ended up South African Airways in business rescue now. And the trade unions, they want to have a say in this whole process. I don't know the business rescuer that has been appointed by government. I'm sure that he will have the necessary qualifications and experience and will be able to do the job. But this is actually a fight between the trade unions and government, because obviously the trade unions want to be in more control of the process, while government wants to be in more control of the process. Government has messed up so far, and I really don't think it's going to make much of a difference who's going to be the business rescuer, because they are experienced people, most of them. They are registered at various institutions, and they usually do a pretty good job. And of course, everybody will be watching them. So I think this is more a case of a conflict or a bit of a wrestle between the government and the trade unions, seeing who's actually in charge of the whole process. But I don't think in the end it's going to make that much of a difference.
Dawie, just finally, there's concerns about the outages that we're experiencing at the moment, that they will bring about another economic non-growth in the next quarter. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, fortunately, we're in a sort of the end of the year. There's not that much economic activities going on during December anyway. So we've had October and November, those 2 months We have there are various economic statistics out already. It doesn't look too good, but with a bit of luck, we could see positive economic growth in those 2 months. Of course, the jury is still out on December. It really depends on what's going to happen with Eskom, with power, whether we're going to see a positive month for December as well. I think it's going to be a disappointing quarter again. I don't think it's going to be a negative quarter. I think there will be some economic growth, but probably significantly below 1%, which means that for the whole, the 2019 could report negative economic growth. And I think this is probably the first time in perhaps in many, many years, but that we've actually reported negative economic growth for the whole year. So I'm afraid that is a real possibility.
Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Dawie Roodt, there is an economist.